Welcome everyone to episode 3 of my Next Guest Bartender. Really happy to have on my brand new sofa Tom Foxwell, the GM of Hawksmoor and Borough Market, Jason Newsell, ex-Savoy, ex-Nomad, current Managing Director of Healthy Hospo. Welcome to Kalukale, welcome to my Next Guest Bartender. Right guys, this is called How to Build a Team That Won't Quit. So that's a little bit of an oxymoron because obviously there will be times where people move on, but also it's almost like a double-edged sword where actually it's also about how to get as much out of your team as possible. Come on in, don't worry, have a seat, no one's looking. It is a bit of a double-edged sword. How do we get the best out of our teams? So there's a couple of things, that I want to talk about, whether that's, a recruitment policy, whether that's human resources, but also, the importance of staff well-being, the importance of mental health, and so on. So, Tom, to begin with, where do you start when you brand new opening, brand new venue? Where do you start with recruitment of your team that won't quit?
I think it has to be a leader. Yeah. So obviously, at Hawksmoor, our latest venue, Wood Wharf, has its own dedicated bar, the Lowback. Obviously, a while ago now, but I used to run Spitalfields Bar as a general manager there. Managing Ali Reynolds is always an exciting challenge, but one I hopefully I stepped up to. But I think you need a leader. I think you have to have someone who'll inspire.
You start at the very top with GM or bar manager?
I think if we're talking about bar specifically, it has to be the bar manager, yeah. And obviously different venues have different structures, but yeah, I think the person that people will look to, the leader.
Is that based on experience or is that based on personality? I mean, what do you look for in that leader?
I mean, you're really looking for that balanced scorecard, right? I think personality is an important one. I think a sort of a cultural fit. I'm sure we'll come on to that later. But yeah, I think sort of values really, and you hope that the values of that individual match to the values of of the organisation or yourself.
And what are the key positions are essential? Going down, in terms of football clubs, you talk about the spine of a team. Like what kind of key positions are you looking to fill?
I mean, I think again in terms of bars, I'd always start in the middle, the bartenders, the front line, and then effectively build around them. And I think, and what I'm always looking for is a huge amount of flexibility. I remember Fraser in the old days at Match, when a Match EC1 would never had any bar backs. It was all bartenders. I remember being blown away that A could convince them to do it.
Yeah, right.
Again, this was probably about 20 years ago. But B, just like the sort of the passion that they had, and like the drive he could create in them, that allowed them to that allowed them to do everything, and so flexible, and also it inspires a lot of empathy between the roles. We've all seen bartenders treat barbacks poorly, glass collectors or whatever that may be. But if you can really create that empathy, if each other can understand each other's role, it allows them to work much better together.
Jay, you were senior bartender at the Savoy and the Nomad as well. You must have seen some pretty epic teams over the last. How long have you been in London now? 6 years? 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
Okay. You must have seen some pretty epic teams through those two places.
Actually it was. I'm very grateful for this. I've worked with incredible people and some cunts as well.
All right.
And
I'm right here.
When I said you could swear, I wasn't really sure which way we were going to go, but that's fine.
We'll take it low. And this is not negative at all. I think we really need to understand that all these different personalities have a big impact to basically made me the way I see things today and the person that I am today. So this is actually a very positive approach, even if it doesn't sound like. I think for me personally, the human aspect has always been the key point in everything, because when we speak about hospitality is a people business. We know that literally everyone can serve a glass of water, a beer, or whatever it is, and also pretty much everyone can learn everything. depending on what kind of tools do you have and how much time you spend in, but also how much interest you have. Obviously, interest is something that we can build on, but everything starts from the people side of things. Now, I think one thing that's very important, specifically in hospitality, is as we spend most of our time, of our private time, or 24 hours when we're awake, is actually at work, specifically in hospitality. And I think it's so important that we find a link between a venue and the person, and how that person identify him, she, itself with a specific venue. And I think that's the key element to keep people, because in the end, if you hire someone, you'll never guarantee that they're going to stay, but obviously that's your job, and your goal is to make them stay the longest possible until you're ready to let that bird kind of like fly away. It's actually a beautiful moment as well, so letting go is a beautiful piece as well, but I think that connection is incredibly important.
I think one of the things that you've touched upon there is mindset as well, because I spoke about it yesterday with Steve. Whether you treat failures as actual, complete failures, or actually setbacks that you learn from, and they are literally stepping stones to find whichever way that you want to get to where you're going. But you've just found another way of how not to do it, as opposed to just completely failing. You have to start all over again. What have I done now? I think another thing we'll probably talk about in a minute as well is people are being drawn to, especially Generation Z now, purpose-driven brands, whether that's in hospitality or not. So there are plenty of of concepts that will certainly attract certain individuals, whether that's sustainability, sustainable practices, or even vegan, restaurants that you can't imagine. Sorry, man. I'm sorry. I know you hate that word. It's almost a swear word at you.
Say that again. I didn't understand the concept.
But yeah, but there are very purpose-driven people out there who will be perfectly happy to take less money and less, all the benefits that come with a job, because they are drawn by the purpose and the message from within that venue. Do you want to talk about recruiters? I'm not even sure if I want to go there. Any stories about recruitment or recruiters in general?
You want to start?
I mean, we've introduced a recruitment team at Hawksmoor.
Right.
And it went from a single person doing it, sort of pre-pandemic, to now a team of 4, plus like sort of 2 people inside at individual restaurants dedicated to it.
And would you before use recruitment agencies?
No, I have done in the past, like pre-Hawksmoor, and it has almost always been for chefs. Again, sort of a little bit out of the remit here and stuff. We are finding it's moving so fast, recruitment at the moment, that effectively by the time you've spoken to a middle person, a recruiter, and they've spoken to the candidate's gone. The candidate's got a role. We put 3 different pay rises in for chefs this year. Again, talking about chefs rather than bartenders, but like
that's hospitality.
Most
bars have kitchens now.
I actually love that you bring that in. It's a good balance.
Yeah. That's true. It's true. But yes, I mean we are. We are sort of upping all the basic bits. The bottom of that pyramid we talk about. The sort of the triangle of needs. Just to make sure that bottom part of the triangle, is as well looked after as possible in terms of flexibility around hours, in terms of like wages, etc., etc. So yeah, less recruiters, but really like a real focus on recruitment.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's the same for anybody watching. I'm sure you're feeling it yourself.
Well, I mean, obviously the labour shortage issues are a thing. It's not something that we're not aware of, but not that I've got any personal or specific issues with recruiters in general. I think from a time a speed perspective, it is a slower process, and also it often seems like just a bit of a waste of money almost, because effectively all they're doing is putting an advert out on the caterer, and you're getting the same responses just coming via an agency instead. So, you know, especially when they charge a percentage of someone's wage, and if they quit within 2 months, 3 months, you get nothing. So, you know, having a recruitment or an HR team, I suppose, is a great way forward. And I'm guessing you're probably not spending much less than you would be spending if it were going through an agency anyway.
From my perspective, I often worked in hotels, so we mainly had the recruitment department within the building. So I'm not really familiar with recruitment, working with recruitment agencies, but I'm actually familiar with them when I would, for example, apply to jobs. And what I really disliked about this is that I meet someone that I have no idea who that person is, and I clearly feel that person really doesn't care actually about me, and that person is trying to sell me a job. So I'm definitely less likely to be keen to actually move forward or just considering that job. So I think specifically again, speaking about hospitality as a people business, I would highly recommend that you do that internally. Whether if it is an HR department, but I'm also very aware that not every business has the size or the budget or the capacity in general that to have such a business, such a department in place. A smaller business is different, but I think just that personal connection just makes already a massive difference. Then I think the other part is when you look at bigger businesses, how painful is it if you need to do 7 interviews to be potentially considered? So specifically nowadays, in our day and age where things go fast, this is just not up to date. So if I just want to be able to pop in, you know, maybe I'm very old fashioned, so I'll probably drop you my CV. Maybe someone does it online and all of that should be considered in the same way. Maybe get a call, come in another day, or maybe do a virtual interview and then let me know how it goes, because I think other things to do as well.
What we have noticed is that if you spend too long between contacting someone, interview process, trial, and then offering the job, it's gone. So, like the interview and the trial should almost be the same thing.
Yeah.
I think also the flip side of this, and our talk is purely about from a bar and a business how to create a team, but also from an employee or a person point of view. What I've noticed more now is that bartenders and chefs can actually, it's almost like they're interviewing us.
Yeah.
You know, what can businesses do for me as a
I think we've always I think, you know, good practice. The industry has always paid lip service to an interview being a two-way thing. But you're absolutely right. It definitely feels like that has flipped. And again, I totally agree. I think speed is of the essence, and I think the trial shift is the perfect thing. I mean, interviews. The only thing that an interview really proves is that someone is good at or bad at interviews.
Yes, actually, it's true.
Yeah, and I think there are people out there who will take advantage of a trial shift. There was a very talented chef who I know did a 15-hour unpaid trial shift.
Oh yeah, in terms of like organisations, yeah, it's horrendous.
Yeah.
Some of the
and he got the job, and he thoroughly deserved it. But if you know if someone's capable of doing that job within an hour, and anything after that, you're taking the piss. You know that shouldn't be.
Just to add on top of that, actually that gives more information to the chef actually than the other way around.
About the company they're about to work for.
Yes, being aware that actually they
But
go trial shift 15 hours. How many hours are you going to do in a normal shift? 27?
Yeah, possibly. Should we talk about bonuses? I mean, there is a certain pay structure. Well, maybe not pay structure, but is there a certain structure, whether that's just basic wage plus trunk or bonuses on top, that as a business that we could look at in a more favourable light? Are we simply paying people for the hours that they work, or should we be paying people for the results that they produce?
I think, if I may jump in right away, I think the most important thing today is security. People need a security. Like we do all know, we have tough times in so many different ways.
Is that true in hospitality? Because there are so many places that are desperate for people to work. You could literally walk out of one bar one night and start somewhere the next.
For me, it feels a bit like musical chairs. Is that like you can the music's playing and you can take that journey, but I mean, we've all seen the news and stuff. It doesn't feel like Trussonomics is going to work for this country. It feels like musical chairs, and you keep going. The music's playing, like you walk around and around and around. But where will you end up sitting when the music stops?
Is security a key thing that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. Even though if I do know that I could leave a bar and then work in another one, I still need to have a security in sense of like how much do I get? Because I have massive expenses. I'm not talking about
Of course
myself.
you do. Of course
In
you
hats.
do.
Tell me about that.
It was actually for free, of course.
Yeah, but it didn't come in the post, did it?
Yeah, it
Did it?
did, yeah.
Or were you at the Greek bar show?
Both. No, the point is really, I think, specifically after all these years, after all these COVID years, uncertainty was such a big thing, and knowing what you do get or won't get is incredibly important. Now we speak about staffing crisis, which is one. We look at the cost of living crisis. Right now, we all need to rethink and re-look at our budgets for the upcoming month. So what I really need is some financial security somewhere and somehow. Because if I don't have that, well, to be very fair, this massively impacts your mental health. And mental health is what we need as a human in general, but and even more so in hospitality. So I think, in my personal opinion, that's definitely one of the biggest up there.
So would that be what, a fixed
Yes.
contract with?
That really depends. That really depends on.
So basically, so long as we can guarantee you a certain amount of money per month,
Yes.
anything else is literally a bonus.
Yes, I think that's the right way to go, because then at least you know, and you can budget for yourself, and anything else is in addition. Because all the additional, I mean, I hope so. You should never plan or calculate the money that you don't have until you have it. So with that, at least you can plan. You can plan your life, and anything else is just a beautiful addition. And it should be that way. But the other part is also we need transparency. So many businesses, unfortunately, and I think that's where the trunk system is a little. I'm not saying it doesn't work.
I think the trunk laws have changed very recently.
Yes.
So you were going to talk about the holding a lot of it back for.
Yeah, I'm not saying trunk system doesn't work. I'm just more saying that many businesses do use the fact or the opportunity to hide some bits, or just not necessarily hiding, because hiding means that you intentionally try to hide something, but also just not being transparent enough, even if they don't do any damage or anything negative, even if they don't have any negative thoughts about it, but just not being transparent gives actually your staff that feeling that you might be able to. And obviously that's all about down to communication and transparency. You want to make sure that all of this is removed and that you can be as transparent as possible.
I think clarity is really important. Following up on that clarity with actions, will produce very, very noticeable results as well.
I think we were finding exactly as you say, people are very worried around trunk because obviously they closed every restaurant and bar in the country closed, and there was no trunk to be made. So I think that we were seeing less so now, but when we first reopened, people were voicing real concerns around trunk. And I think the same. I think people have been ripped off elsewhere, and they're effectively giving us, and we were at Hawksmoor was almost effectively paying for other people's snidiness, for the want of a better word. I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think that stability and that transparency is great for people's mental health, isn't it?
Yes,
Again, it goes back to that sort of triangle of needs. If we're not doing the basic security at the very bottom of that triangle, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if the very bottom of that triangle, putting a roof over my head, paying my bills, paying for food this week, this month, then it doesn't matter how snazzy the place looks or how great the drinks are or the competitions you enter or the trips you go on. If you can't pay your rent, none of it matters, right? I think I will just put a word of defence in for the trunk system. I mean, obviously, number one, you don't pay national insurance on it, so it definitely benefits our team, and something that I think that people sort of aren't really aware of. But for me, the great thing is that the busier we are, the more successful that business, and top line as well. We're not talking about saving blue roll and have we got a good gas price, which let's face it is pretty vital at the moment. But top line, a customer comes in, they have a great, and we talk about something called the service charge triangle, and that is turnover, staffing levels, stuff, and then effective mistakes, comps and invite backs and stuff. If a customer comes in, a pleasant, a great looking bartender in a wonderful hat, serves a great drink and really charms that customer. Talks them through like an amazing array of cocktails or the cognac selection. They stay there. They maybe have one more drink than they were going to have. We do that with like a good, a healthy tension in staffing. Not too many people, but not too little. We've all been there when there's too many people working and they all talk to each other rather than talking to customers. And we don't make any mistakes. The bill's right, the drink's great, etc., etc. That's how we make sure that our team takes the most amount of money per hour that they can. And I think that it's a really great way to describe the process, to a team member. It really benefits the business. Obviously, I can see your eyes ticking over for every thing I mentioned.
To be honest, like I was just mentioning it to our team last night, that pretty much everything that we talk about on the sofa is something that we've been talking about, within our company anyway. Are there any other bonus related structures that you can, that have worked well in the past, whether that's maybe a good EHO report or a 5-star review on Google or anything like that you've seen, maybe not written into people's contracts, but something that will at the end of each quarter, and obviously net profit is the key. If you don't have any money, you can't pay bonuses. But is there anything that you've seen that has really incentivized or motivated staff?
There are a couple of things. Obviously, I need to be a little careful because we can feel different ways about it, but I think it's worth to talk about. I think if you have your Micros card or you log in for within the system, and you basically with that you can track every single employee's revenue they basically make, and I think that's quite powerful because it showcases who does basically the most of the money, and obviously that's where it gets a little tricky. So it brings up some competition. Now, competition can be great, positive and healthy competition, but it can go very quickly out of hand as well. So we need to be very careful with that. But I still think using or at least collecting some of that data and giving some small rewards to your staff is something that I personally suggest to consider. Now there are other things to do as well. If you look at in general, if you have your quarterly meeting with your staff and you're able to turn up and saying, hey, look, all this month every month you've just doing better in sense of sales, every month you've just doing better in sense of the way that you perform, etc., etc., etc. The more data you actually have and the more you can actually show that to a person, well, the more motivating this is, because they see, first of all, that the good work is noted somewhere, is collected somewhere, and second of all, that you do appreciate that. And it gives you then the opportunity to navigate that and support, if support is needed somewhere, to facilitate them doing the tasks in a better way. Or I think it's quite powerful to collect these pieces.
And then there's that goes back to the clarity and transparency, from literally the top all the way down.
Yes, I think it's super important. It's not about, and if someone does less well, it's not about calling that person out. Not at all. It's really about seeing where people stand and how we can support them. Because people in hospitality, or I guess in general, we're all looking for a purpose. And the biggest purpose in life is we want to learn, we want to grow. And that's what we want to do in a business as well. So if you give them these tools, well, these people are going to, most likely, are going to stay longer in your business as well and perform better as well.
I think I'll sound like a note of caution around bonuses. I think there's quite a lot of literature around about how incentives and bonuses work. I think Tim Harford talks about it in one of his books, maybe The Logic of Life. And he basically says that whatever you put a bonus on, someone will game the system and try and find their way out of there. I think the example he uses is whatever it was. I mean, it's from a while ago now, but I think it was a 4-hour wait at an A&E. And hospitals, literally saving lives. The people in these places are there for a purpose. They're there to, there is medics. But the amount of people who waited 3 hours and 58 minutes versus 4 hours 15 or 4 hours or 20 or whatever, shot up exponentially. And I think the problem, and while the examples you gave are perfect, right? EHO, 5-star. Why is, like we need to look after our customers, look after our team. Is the place, someone's not going to trip over and kill themselves? Are we going to poison someone with, like this stuff's absolutely vital. Who would disagree? And, Google reviews, TripAdvisor reviews, Open Table reviews. I mean, this is customers like who've had such a great time that they feel like compelled to go online and say how much they're having. But we know that for every here's something to focus on, there'll be like something, something else that falls off the block. And I think even with such a complex bonus system that involves so many box ticking and sort of hoop jumps, by the time you get to the end of it, no one's quite sure if they've done well or not. Yeah. Or you go the other way and you just base it. And it's the same at Hawksmoor, above a certain level. They just say company's done well, here's your bonus. And I think I've been there for 12 years, and I think the only time I didn't make it was during the pandemic, and I was like, we haven't actually made any money this year. It's like, all right, guys. They were very good to us anyway, so I definitely can't complain. But yeah, so I think that I'm definitely of that sort of mindset. I'm quite logical, quite a, if A equals B, then you should get C. But I say the more you think about it, I'm just always concerned about gaming the system. Yeah. And again, about priorities, right? If we're just talking about money, we'd all probably be in foreign exchange or something, right? We do hospitality for the love, we do it for the, for the customer and for the team. And actually, if we start incentivizing EHO or money in the till or whatever it may be, if that goes to the top of the list, what falls off the bottom? Exactly. And I think actually you hope that grown-up people with a passion for the industry want to do best.
Well, I mean, we've already said, people want to be in the venue that they're working for. If they're looked after and they feel safe and secure, and that they're being well rewarded and remunerated for the work that they're doing, then that's a pretty good start. So we've got our team. Bless you. We've got our team. We've got our venue. We're starting to make some money. How do we bring this all together? How do we make it better from we've cleared up contracts and bonuses and that everyone knows how much money they're taking home. How do we make it better? Jay, we've touched on it a little bit already. Oh, I'll tell you what, Tom, do you want to take over, because the vodka that we put in Jay's
that Blanco is really that was 100% agave. What's going on?
It hit me only at the end of the podcast.
It must have sunk.
Sorry, Rich.
Yeah, that's cool. Just saying, how do we make it now that we've got our team in, everyone's happy, everyone's been here for a while, everyone knows their contract and their terms and conditions, and they know their job role inside out. How do we make it better so that they're at the point now that they feel appreciated?
Amazing. I mean, I hope they already felt appreciated all along the way. Mm-hmm. First of all, because appreciation is what gives you motivation. Mm-hmm. But actually motivation, dies at some point. So it's really about the habits. Mm-hmm. I use habits specifically when we speak about personal development. I guess more when we speak about business, I would rather use the word systematics. Mm-hmm. Now, systematics are incredibly important, but culture is probably even more important.
Yep. Yeah.
Time for culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, culture is such a big word, in our industry. Massively. You want to keep going on that?
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy to talk about culture all the time.
Great.
How do you develop that culture?
Well, obviously, so first of all, I need to say, when we speak about culture, there are two differences. The first difference is how do you open up a business and set up a new culture in? And if you don't open up, if you already have a business that is already running, how do you actually improve that culture? Mm-hmm. So the most important thing when we look at culture is we need to revise it and optimize it, and that's not only once or twice, but that's constantly. Mm-hmm. So we need to be on top of this. So what means culture? Culture is really about what are we doing, why are we doing it, and specifically, what are we not doing in here? Mm-hmm. What do we stand for? That's the culture of your business, and that's also the identity that we carry as a person in the business. So now, how do we develop a great culture? Yeah, obviously it depends what you stand for. Where are you going? And also how you implement that into people. So, I don't know. Let's take an example. Imagine at the end of the shift, every night we have we drink 3 daiquiris every single night. All right. Well, the thing is,
The heartburn. Oh, I can do it.
yeah, and then we change to tequila. So
Someone's already starting on tequilas.
I'm finishing. Well, the reality is, so many people would say, you know what, you shouldn't have a drink after work because it's alcohol and whatever. You know what, this is such a vital moment in the evening. But does it need to be 3 daiquiris? It could be also 1, or it also could be just a non-alcoholic drink as an example. It could also be, instead of having that every single night, it could be specified on a weekend. So it's really about the culture in how do we approach that sense of camaraderie at the end of the shift, and what does it bring actually to us? Is it about getting together and getting wasted, or is it about decompressing, having that last little moment together, reflecting, and doing something productive for us? Now, you put this in place in the way that you want to, but if you don't revise that, it just gets out of control. So in the end, you might have every single evening people getting smashed in your bar, which is completely the opposite of what you actually tried to achieve. So that's why I'm saying that you need to revise that. And that's just one example.
Tom, do you put together a bar manual, or is this just, does this start from management or even owner behaviour?
I mean, I think culture has to be all has to be everything, right? It has to be all people and at all times as well. And I think that. And I think actually you can set that in a variety of ways. I think it goes back to your very first question, really, when setting up a venue, a business. Where do you start? And that's the leader, whether that be like a bar manager in a fairly big organisation, or you're very, when you crack the doors here at your very first time.
Yeah.
I mean, like the culture you have set here and all your other venues, is the culture of the organisation, right?
Because one of the things that we really pride ourselves on here is actually the development of obviously the bartenders, but also the management team as well. And I think the last time I checked, and I'm going to include Stu in this because he did about 4 shifts upstairs and a takeover. I think we have 7 or maybe even 8 ex-employees here that have gone on to open up their own bar and their own venue, and that's one of the things that we have to install in our guys is them understanding the financial information. And it's not just how much we're taking top line, but it's also understanding things like cash flow and understanding VAT. And Tronc is obviously a big thing, but being able to develop teams and the whole part of running a business as a bar, so that if you give me 2 years, I'll teach you everything I know. You'll be in a position to open up your own place.
I think it goes back to Jason's point about growth, right? We are all trying to grow. We're all trying to develop. We're all trying to move forward, and I think that's a great example. Whether that be a very junior, bar back, their first shift on the bar, or a bar manager with plenty of experience, but is looking for the next phase. Is looking for the numbers, the nitty gritty, the financials. We've also worked somewhere where the person above us isn't. You feel like you do a better.
Yeah, I can do a better job than everyone else, right?
And I think that. And so people are keen to learn and are willing to learn. I think it's great. It's great in the moment in that place, but also at the back of your mind. It's good in your CV. It means that you can say that you've learned this in your current job, and then you can not only is that beneficial to you at the moment, but it's also something you can talk about with the next.
We skipped on to culture, but one thing I just wanted to revert back to when it came to salaries: can team members, especially bartenders, management, I think should be in a position to do this, but can team members negotiate their starting salary?
I don't see why not.
Right?
Yes.
So I read a stat just when I was putting this together, and it's a tricky one to discuss, but it's something I think we should be brought to the forum. Is that across the board, not just in hospitality, 53% of men will negotiate their starting salary, but only 9% of women will do that. And I think that's something that, if we're saying that it's something that should be done, I think it's perfectly acceptable to go, especially when there is such a labour shortage and supply and demand economics dictate that, if we don't pay it, someone else will. that it is perfectly reasonable, perfectly acceptable to go, look, this is what I would expect. And we're talking about security and paying the bills and so on. This is what I would expect as a starting wage. If you can't do it, not a problem. But this is what I need.
I think it goes back to the market you're talking about, right? In that, if you let's go back one step further. The package, what we are, why we work somewhere, is much more than just the pounds and the pence. But it is the bottom of that pyramid, bottom of the hierarchy of needs. If we can't fill that, everything else is almost, the theory says that it is pointless doing anything else because at that point, if people can't pay their bills, they're not worried about anything else. So I think it is very important. I think that, in individual negotiations, there's like a fairness aspect there, like human beings, but also like the HR law stuff says that like we have to be fair to people. To be very hard for, and again also I think that in principle it's private, but this stuff gets talked about. First three daiquiri after shift night. This stuff gets talked about straight away, and I think it never stays very private very long. And then in my experience, we end up finding is like then trying to discuss why bartender A is getting paid more than bartender C, even though bartender D has been here much longer, but bartender B won that comp and blah blah blah. I think it's good to like sort of benchmark yourself against the industry, and again that tends to be fairly, if not transparent, fairly well known. We've all got a rough idea who pays the best, who pays the worst, la la la. But I think maybe coming from a bigger organisation or whatever it may be, but I would be very wary of like saying, you can have this much, and you can have this much, and you can have this much. Just don't tell anyone because like it's going to bite me in the ass within a week.
I think it would be very difficult to expect it from a bartender position, but from a management perspective, that's when you should know your own true worth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that's where what you're effectively stating your value when it comes to an interview. Guys, we're going to wrap it up in a minute. We've talked about it a little bit, but what are teams looking for from an employer, do you think? You've got about 3 minutes left. So, is there a top 5 or a top 2?
Yeah, we very quickly, we need to understand that we have changed in the way that we see things and the way that we do things. So in reality I just want an employer that values me. I want an employer that is transparent. I want an employer that's able to talk to me openly. So I guess these are the fundamentals in here is really about being human. This is what we are looking at. This is what people are looking for. Then, in addition to that, we also need to understand that Gen Z is kind of like these are the new employees. So what's Gen Z? 97 to millennials, etc. So we actually just had a quote today, or actually a statement today. In 8 years, by 2030, the most of the employees will be Gen Z. So we really need to understand that this is the future. This is the future. And they are very sensitive in the way that they see the world, also the way that they see money. They're often not about money. They care about many other valuable
I think they value their free time as well.
Absolutely, yes.
It's not about doing 15 hours. Yeah.
It was quite funny actually. There was a Twitter thread, and it basically said like, and it had like a newspaper article from effectively every 20 years back to like 1891, and each individual article was like, I tell you what, kids these days, they just do not want to work hard, and literally it was talking about like people, about tenant farmers in 1891 or whatever, and literally like 1910, 1930. What is it with these, just these jive dancing in the Charleston in the nightclubs?
These 6-year-olds that don't want to be chimney sweeps anymore. What is going on?
Yeah. So I think there will always be a bit of an intergenerational thing. I think Hugh Osmond or someone on Twitter again was ranting about like these people obsessed with work-life balance. But I don't know, I feel like it has always been the way. I feel like, when I was younger, I was very happy to, put the 80, 90 hours in, do it for not a lot of money and a lot of recognition. And, and I feel like that now that people are like, people are a bit more aware of their self-worth, really. And exactly as you say, I think people are like, I think after, effectively having 2 years to sort of just ponder life over lockdown and stuff, people are thinking differently about about what they want from work and what they get from work, and about how that ties in with the rest of their life. I think me personally as well, let alone January Zers. I think I'm probably too old to be a millennial, but like, and only just I think on the cusp.
Well, we know you don't work any more than 35 hours.
Well, that's exactly it, yeah. In 2 days, right?
Yeah. Right, that's pretty much it. Gents, thank you so much for.
Please, we
joining
left
me.
it on how old it was. That was a great
Yeah,
one.
well,
to
that's very much to leave. We'll definitely finish on that note. Thank you so much. We've got a little bit of time for any questions. So if anyone wants to ask a question of these two, I mean, you two.
I think Stuart Hudson should be first person to answer.
Well, I'm going to check my phone in a minute to find out where he is, because he'll probably waltz through the door expecting his beer any minute now.
He's only here.
And
He's only here for the last.
there we go. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
So
Lucas.
At the very beginning, you mentioned recruitment failures.
Recruitment, sorry?
Failures.
Yes.
So how do you handle them?
I mean, like any setback, you make sure that you learn from it. Try not to make the exact same mistakes again, and move forward as quickly as possible. I think, personally, like if I make a mistake or if I've just fucked up in a big way, the worst thing that can happen is for me to just sit and stress and mull over it. You've got to figure out what you've done wrong and then move on as quickly as possible, so that you don't make the same mistake again. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
You on that thought. I think that's, for me personally, that's kind of like the way you should live. I recommend to live it. It helps. Meanwhile, that doesn't mean that it has always been in that way for myself, so I had to learn it the hard way. But yeah, definitely, I think in reality you just can't make it always right. It's more actually the other way around. You will actually make it more often wrong than actually right. You have just a very tiny percentage of the people are just incredible, and all the other people you just really have to work hard on them, and that's positive. So I think it's really about learning more to deal with failure rather than success, because success is just such a small bit in.
I think it goes back to the culture and the value point that we were talking about earlier. In that, I think I've definitely learned a couple of times about like people who I'd effectively written off, and then were just a bit slow and a bit slow to pick it up. I mean, a bar back at Trailer who was never going to get it, never going to make it, and actually became our best guy. It just took him a bit longer to pick it up. And so I think that giving people a chance and maybe like, mellowing on your expectation a little bit can sometimes do you a favour.
Have you seen the Last Dance?
I've not
Michael
seen the
Jordan.
Last Dance.
So Michael Jordan, obviously is one of the all-time greatest basketball players. Scored something stupid like 6,000 shots in a 14-year period, but actually missed 70% of his shots. But he didn't let himself get clouded or bogged down or anything. And one of the quotes that he says in one of the episodes is, why would I stress out about taking a shot? Why would I worry about missing a shot that I haven't even taken yet? Like, just because I've done it before, it's not gonna. And it's really about the mindset, that we spoke about right at the beginning. You know what? Everyone makes mistakes. From whether you're making the mistake or someone has made a mistake, you just got to move on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about failure in general, I absolutely agree. I think like we talk about survivable failure, and we talked about before we started, right? It's so important. It's so vital that we, that people have that space to make that mistake. If you don't, you spend your whole time stressing about not making a decision rather than stressing about a decision you made. What's a horrendous quote? I'd rather be. I'd rather. It's escaped me now. But basically saying like you'd rather regret the mistakes you made rather than the mistakes you didn't, right?
Yeah. If you don't make any mistakes, you'll never move forward or whatever it is. But yeah.
Some pleasant noises around that sort of.
Anyone else? Any more questions? Hi.
What do you think the biggest challenge is for the hospitality industry now?
In terms of building a team, or actually the whole hospitality in general?
Let's say for the individuals.
Individual.
For teams.
I think probably security would be one thing. There are so many bars going out of business. The costs of running a hospitality venue are really, really high, and they're only getting bigger. If you look at inflation reports from this morning, there are always possibilities that that places just can't pay their rent. The place next door to us literally got repossessed by the landlord a couple of days ago. So the people who work there are now out of a job. I suppose that's got to be a worry. I suppose from a mental health point of view as well, alcohol, drug addiction, it's always very, it's late nights, you're surrounded by booze, the opportunity is more there, I'd say, than in most other industries.
Inebriated customers and all the the sort of the dangers and the damage that can bring. But I think it's that whole, I think we could list the sort of the concerns and like sort of the risks and stuff that associated with hospitality. I imagine that anybody in the room or watching at home is aware of them. But I think really it's we have to like balance that, and it's the it's that the teams that are built, the friends you make, like that whole like forged in fire. You come off the back of a very busy night Saturday shift. I mean, my first like cocktail gig was I worked for Jake Berger in Leeds. We went out for lunch just around the corner last week. And like he was one of the ushers at my wedding. We've been best mates ever since. And I think those teams, that working together, that late night, people, making sure that people have a great time the other side of the bar. That's really like, that's why we do it. That's the.
Yeah, I think another worry, just from a personal side of it, would probably be things like sleep, nutrition levels.
I mean, shift work in itself, whether it be like night nurses or people in like Amazon warehouses.
Yeah.
It's not it is not supposed to be good for you. Mm-hmm. Again, I think like the list of things that are wrong.
Yeah.
But it's great we've got organisations like yours that are really focusing on this and like really shining a light and showing there's help available to people, right?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, why we're doing this is because we have realized that if you look at like the hospitality, there are so many habits that we have and so many ways that we do things. And what really is missing is a balance to sustain actually people in hospitality and support them. So for example, if today you are 18 and you think like, shall I go to work in hospitality? Well, you probably do it because you just try and because you need some money and whatever. But many people are actually worried because they care about their health. And so it is very tricky actually to make hospitality attractive to specifically the new generation. Because if you look at like how we've been operating in the past years or decades, actually it's not necessarily healthy.
Yeah,
and I think it's very important that we change that perception for people, and also for people and operations in general. So I think health and well-being obviously is very close to my heart, and I think it's a key element for any successful business.
That's it. We know that for mental health, we know that sort of like support group around you, like sort of the sort of the support and the love of your peers, is really important. And again, it's great. So healthy hospitality. We had Kelly's Cause in, who are like a mental health charity specifically aimed at the hospitality industry. They came in last week to do a chat. We're doing some work with them. People like Hospitality Action. They're great as well. After the terrorist attacks in London Bridge, we had them in. They did like a sort of one-on-ones and like team briefings with our team at Borough. I think that
I'm going to have to add Merle Cameling as well to that. For
I know you were talking about her before. She sounds amazing.
Me, Myself, and Mind. She basically she is Alex Cameling's husband, but also has a hospitality background and is a freelance therapist who basically offers her services purely to the hospitality industry. I know she's retained by Soho House. She's on our books as well, not on a retainer point of view, but if we've got any issues with bereavement or addiction or anything like that and people want to do it, it's obviously completely confidential.
And that's it. And I think that's it. In the old days, the fun, the team, the late nights, the people the other side of the bar, the camaraderie between your bar and other bars, that was always there, and the other sort of the negative side of it got swept under the carpet. I think now it goes back to your point about transparency, right? We are open and we are transparent that there are rewards, great rewards for working in hospitality, but also risks involved. But there's also plenty of support, and not just like a generic going to the GP and hope you get like an appointment in 12 weeks. People specifically aimed at hospitality who have come from the industry, who understand the pressures of late night, being surrounded by alcohol, being surrounded by inebriated people, even getting the bus home at 2 o'clock in the morning can be a thrill ride sometimes, right? So I mean, I think that's great. It's not just there are issues, go and sort yourself out, but we are aware of issues within our industry, and there are very specific people. You know, you guys being the perfect example, that are there to help and protect our teams, right?
Gents, I'm going to wrap that up there. Thank you so much for joining me for my next guest bartender. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've loved it. Tom Foxwell, Jason Newsell, thank you very much.